sponsor of terror is Iran. Like, you see that all the time, for example, on a place like Fox Business or something like that. So in 2017, he suggested that Russia and Iran are the axis of evil today and collaborated in the negotiations and played us like a fiddle. The same event hosted by the Israel Project, a right-wing organization that called for opposition settlements as a kind of ethnic cleansing. Engels said of his Republican predecessor as Foreign Affairs Chairman, "There's not any difference in the way that we think about the issue of Iran. I could take his speech and read it. He could take mine and read it." Awesome. Engels' long record of a right-wing foreign policy includes also joining Republicans to ensure Saudi Arabia could keep bombing in many civilians with internationally condemned cluster munitions, supporting the brutal 2013 military coup in Egypt, supporting Morocco's annexation of the Western Sahara, helping pass crippling sanctions in Syria, Iran, and Russia, and most recently urging President Trump to not lift sanctions on Iran even during the pandemic, literally killing many innocent civilians. The most defining issue of Engels' career has been his uncompromising support of Israel, which rivals even that of the most hawkish Republicans. Engels advocated for defunding the UN Relief Agency for Palestinian refugees and criminalizing boycotts of Israel, and has defended the natural growth of Israeli settlements. Yeah, natural growth! Literally brought in by, like, the IDF of settlements along the West Bank, giving Israel a pretext to continue its illegal encroachment on Palestinian land, like, literally illegal. The first legislation Engels introduced as a freshman in Congress, other than a minor amendment, was a 1990 resolution to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital and give Israel full control of the city. 28 years later, he celebrated President Trump's decision to do exactly that, condemned by the UN Security Council. And when asked about Bowman's comment in an interview with Jacobin that the United States should seriously consider placing humanitarian conditions on military aid to Israel in response to its continued human rights abuses, conditioning aid for Israel is one of the stupidest things I've ever heard, said Engels. So yeah, this is a guy who probably will, if given the chance, send your kids to war. He will send America to war. He will, really, what he does is serve probably some of the most, he also, by the way, looks like a character from VeggieTales, I'll say. It would be great to take a look at his open secrets. And he also did say, of course, the famous line that really, I think, made this race a kind of contentious race was, if I didn't have a primary, I wouldn't care, which was his kind of big way of saying, yeah, I literally, I'm in now. It doesn't matter. No, like once you get in, I'm in. So his biggest source of income are donations, are pro-Israel PACs, and securities and investment. Pro-Israeli America PAC donated $71,768 to him through 2019 to 2020. He has support from NORPAC, Apollo Global Management, Retner Management, Century 21 Department Stores. So that's the big part of his funding comes from just completely supporting Israel. And if you have any kind of qualms about what we're doing in Israel, although not many Americans really know or understand what we're doing in Israel, which is a shame because it's really awful, then he is just the last candidate for you. So yeah, that is a little bit about Bowman. Pro-Israel advocates have warned that of the repercussions Engels' loss would have for the Democratic Party's alignment with Israel. Neocon journalist Jonathan Tobin writes that Engels' positions resemble more of those of the Likud party than Democrats or Republicans, making his continued tenure at the Foreign Affairs Committee a crucial matter for friends of the Jewish state. So, recognizing the stakes of the race, the Pro-Israel Political Action Committee has called NORPAC has bundled well over $600,000 for Engels' campaign, which has raised just 2.2% of its funds from small donors. Another pro-Israel PAC, the Democratic Majority for Israel, DFMI, has spent over $1.5 million on independent campaign expenditures supporting Engel, which pretty much means they just bought ads at their own accord in supporting for Engel, and some of them told pretty vicious smears about Jamal Bowman, including bringing up his history, the fact that he was in debt once, and he didn't vote for Obama in the 2012 Democratic primary. Literally, the 2012 Democratic primary. While Bowman has centered his campaign on a strong domestic platform around economic and racial justice, he often emphasized how connected these issues are with foreign policy. His campaign slogan is jobs and education, not bombs and incarceration. He advocates dramatically reducing the Pentagon's budget because it doesn't align with the values of our district, especially when we have so many in need, because what we spend on foreign policy takes away from what we can spend at home. Coming up next, we'll give you a full preview of these elections, and we'll tell you the truth about Teddy Roosevelt. Ladies and gentlemen, I cannot thank you enough for listening to programming from the Spencer Walsh Radio Network. It really means a lot. So if you like what you're hearing, please consider supporting us by checking out our merch store available on Spreaker.com/TSWS. The link for it is there. Also, if you like what you're hearing, feel free to leave us a review on wherever or however you listen. You can do it on Spreaker by leaving a positive comment, and of course on iTunes by rating and reviewing us 5 stars, and on whatever possible program or site that you listen to SWRN on. Leave a nice review, leave a good comment, let us know your feedback, and also if it's negative too, I always welcome constructive feedback. Thank you so much for listening, and now let's get back to your show. We're going to take this time now to talk a little bit about elections. Between a suddenly competitive Senate race in Kentucky and the possibility of the ouster of 4 entrenched incumbents in New York, Tuesday's primary elections feature the largest scale confrontation yet between the Democratic establishment and the party's progressive wing. In New York especially, the primaries will test the political muscle of AOC, who has thrown her weight behind several progressives running for Congress and the state legislature. We'll be talking about that today, and also we'll tell you about Teddy Roosevelt. As his statue's coming down, we will reflect on historical terms as his legacy. On his legacy as president, we'll talk about some new John Schwartz in The Intercept about that. So that's a lot of fun. So 4 other states, including Mississippi, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Virginia, will hold their primaries or primary runoffs, but there are no special races of note that are worth watching. Regardless, don't really wait up late tonight for the results, because coronavirus has forced most states to conduct elections predominantly by absentee ballot. So it could take more than a week to learn who won the biggest races. New York won't start counting its absentee ballots until June 30th, and at least a third of Kentucky Valley counties, including the 2 biggest, will not release any results until that date either. So it's going to be a while. Honestly, we may just not even say who's going to win or talk about it all tonight. But we'll keep you posted. Follow my Twitter at SPW272 for that latest on that. The highest contested office on the ballot today is the Democratic primary for U.S. Senate in the Bluegrass State. That's Kentucky. For months, Amy McGrath, the former Marine who gained national attention for her strong but unsuccessful House run in 2018, seems like a shoo-in for the Democratic nomination to take on the Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, helped by her own national following, an intense Democratic desire to defeat McConnell, and the backing of the DSCC, that's Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee. McGrath raised massive sums of money for the race, around $41.1 million as of June 3rd, even more than McConnell. But locally, there are some signs of resistance to McGrath. A few Democrats in the Kentucky state legislature have backed State Representative Charles Booker, while some progressive activists support farmer and former Marine Mike Breuer. But recently, however, Booker, who would be Kentucky's first black senator, has gained attention for speaking out about racial inequality at local protests against police violence, which have carried a special meaning in Louisville as it is the hometown of Breonna Taylor and also of Charles Booker. So, yeah, Booker's leadership impressed the state's 2 biggest newspapers, which endorsed him and even galvanized progressive nationally, with Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders and Senator Elizabeth Warren endorsing Booker in the final weeks of the race. So, yeah, I think this is going to be tough. It's probably going to be the toughest fight that progressives are going to have in the night. They're all these are all very, very interesting kind of battles here. But this is probably going to be the toughest one, but I think really mostly because of the voter suppression. Like McGrath has none of the momentum. Booker has all the momentum right now. But the fact that there are two real, there's like one polling place in all of the county that holds Louisville, Kentucky in, which is probably the biggest base of support for Booker, and the fact that that was closed down really speaks volumes, I think. The fact that they closed all but one polling place in Louisville, Kentucky, the county that holds Louisville, Kentucky. I think it's very, very clear. 600,000 people gets one polling location. So hopefully most people are voting online. But a city of 600,000 people were literally only allowed one polling place, which is absolutely psycho. It's psycho. And it's legitimately one of the biggest, I think probably one of the biggest abominations, probably one of the biggest obstacles, if not the biggest obstacle to Booker winning this race. So let's turn into New York. The most direct clash between the two wings of the Democratic Party is in the 16th district, where 16-term Representative Eliot Engel, as we talked about, is being challenged by Jamal Bowman. Of course, he said the biggest turning point of the race was where there was the gaffe of Jamal Bowman coming out and saying, if I didn't have a primary, I wouldn't care. That was the biggest moment that was really impacted him. Pretty much he was trying to get on the stage because he had a primary, and he wouldn't really take an active role if he didn't have a primary in speaking and advocating for his district. That gaffe, plus another progressive challenger dropping out and endorsing Bowman, gave Bowman momentum. The Justice Democrats and the Working Families Party had been backing Bowman for months, but he also now has the support of Ocasio-Cortez, Sanders, and a pretty big local newspaper in the area called the New York Times. Bowman's campaign says it's raised more than $600,000 from June 1st to 12th, which is pretty insane. Although Engel has spent more and had more cash on hand as of June 3rd. We talked about that in the last segment. A Data for Progress poll conducted for Bowman gave the challenger a surprisingly wide 10-point lead, although Engel's campaign claims it has internal polls that show Engel ahead, so we shall see. A few of New York City's other incumbents face notable challenges, though lack of polling means it's kind of hard to gauge how serious they are. In the Brooklyn-based 9th District, community organizer Adam Bunkdedeco is back for a rematch with the 7-term Representative Yvette Clarke after losing just 53% to 47% in the 2018 Democratic primary. Ideologically, both Clarke and Bunkdedeco are staunch progressives. There also is an interesting guy, Isaiah Davis, who I think is pretty well, or Isaiah Thomas, I forget. Well, he's probably not going to win, but he's a DSA endorsed guy who, if you haven't voted yet in the 9th District, and you're somehow listening to this, you have a few more hours. You have 2.5 more hours to go vote for that guy, Isaiah. I forget what his name is. I just know his first name is Isaiah. In the 12th District, 14-term Representative Carolyn Maloney, who also confronts a familiar face, attorney Suraj Patel, who lost to Maloney 60 to 40% in 2018. However, Democratic socialists Lauren Ashcraft and Peter Harrison are also running this year, threatening to split that anti-incumbent vote. As of June 3rd, Maloney is an ideologically kind of median Democrat, and the chair of the House Oversight and Reform Committee outspent her three challengers combined $2.0 million to $754,186. The 10th District, which zigzags across Manhattan and Brooklyn, Rep. Jerry Nadler faces two challengers. The former New York Deputy Secretary of Economic Development, Lindsey Boylan, wonderful progressive, and former Andrew Yang staffer Jonathan Herzog, although Nadler, who played a pretty strong role in Trump's impeachment proceedings, has a pretty progressive voting record. Boylan and Herzog argue that he's all bark and no bite. And by the way, Jerry Nadler is in no way a progressive. Sorry. He's in no way a progressive. He's a Democratic Party establishment figure through and through. And a pretty effectual impeachment manager, I must say. Finally, there's no one place where Indian establishment forces are playing defense. there's only one place, where the anti-establishment forces are playing defense. Ocasio-Cortez's AOC's 14th district in the Queens and the Bronx, where former CNBC